Hillary Clinton could reportedly be questioned by the FBI about her private email server within the coming weeks. The Bureau investigating whether sensitive information that flowed through Clinton's email server was mishandled. The FBI already questioning one of the Democratic frontrunner's closest aides, Huma Abedin. Doug Burns is a former federal prosecutor and a defense attorney. Robert Bianchi, a criminal defense attorney and a former head county prosecutor. Gentlemen, welcome. I know there's a lot at stake right here politically in a big way for Mrs. Clinton. Let me ask you, Doug, do you think right now, if you're a betting guy, that you expect her to be questioned by the FBI?
Yes, I expect her to be questioned by the FBI for sure, but then the corollary, secondary question that I thought you might ask, do I expect her to be charged with a crime? No, I don't. I think the thing's just way too much of a political firestorm. I think there are arguments back and forth. In fairness, I think there are some arguments that she may have violated the statute, but then again, it's a political football beyond.
What about the optics? Even if she isn't charged but is questioned, if you are defending Mrs. Clinton there, what do you advise her on how she conducts herself and how to manage the story?
As a former prosecutor and now defense attorney, we all know the most important axiom of the criminal justice process, and that is do not offer your client up to give any kind of testimony whatsoever when there's a potential criminal investigation going on. However, when you represent high-level profile clients like I do, they're between a rock and a hard place, because if they don't cooperate, then it is seen politically that the exercising of their constitutional rights, which is there to protect not only the guilty but the innocent, somehow puts a smear on her. So she was going, in my opinion, to cooperate. She has cooperated, but I agree with Doug. I have said from the beginning of this case, this will never be charged as a crime. The facts aren't there. Nobody is looking at the case law, which has very, very difficult things for prosecutors to show, especially in light of the fact when you look at the statistic that 80% of the cases referred to the Department of Justice for crimes like this never get prosecuted. That's what we call prosecutorial discretion. Just because you can charge doesn't mean you should. And I think, with all that said, there are not even anywhere near sufficient facts to justify a criminal charge against Secretary Clinton.
I know you think there is enough to justify, to a point.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, you know, a lot of it comes from the rhetoric that was immediately being thrown around. You know, other secretaries of state did this. Well, wait a minute. None of them had a private, separate server. They may have used the private email address, but it went through a government server. That's number one. And then the other thing that's very troubling is there was no intent to violate the law. That implicates all kinds of things that are irrelevant. Ignorance of the law is not a defense. Okay, I didn't know it was illegal. And much more importantly, from a factual standpoint, as Secretary of State, she took an oath immediately upon taking office that I will know what is classified and what isn't. So knowledge is built in by virtue of that process of taking that oath.
Yeah, I disagree completely. That a lot of those laws include intent, knowledge, purpose, and require that you're trying to subvert, in some of those statutes, the interest of the United States government.
Not in this one.
But what about the fact that she...
Some of the statutes
not in this one, no,
the Espionage Act, for example.
But not in this one.
But what about the fact that she decided herself which emails to delete?
Well, that's the thing, okay? Robert, let's say you and I are sitting in a conference room. You're my boss. You're the county prosecutor. And I'm like, we're investigating an individual over emails, but let me assure you, the defendant went through all of them and said it was fine.
Yeah,
that's embarrassing.
The issue in this particular case is that we know, and I said this from the beginning, those emails, 90% of them, I think the statistic is, or at least 80, I think it's 90, had actually made their way onto government servers. What people don't understand about this case is that prosecutors don't take weak cases, difficult cases. The U.S. Attorney's Office is notorious for making sure that they put a bow on a case. There's no way a person can get out of it before they bring charges against a high-level official like this. And they also use the rule of reason. They're not going to prosecute somebody for a mistake or for something that they did that perhaps was an innocent mistake.
But there are those who say she's not going to get charged primarily because of the political optics of this. Well, this is an election year, that there's a lot riding on this, and to charge someone who's the Democratic nominee at this point with without heavy-duty evidence to support it will not stand.
A prosecution at this level, working off of Robert's point, he's right. I mean, this has to be essentially personally signed off by the Attorney General of the United States, Loretta Lynch, who I coincidentally worked with as a prosecutor in Brooklyn. I don't think that's going to happen in a million years. There's tremendous political conflict of interest, obviously, not to be cynical, but, you know, she works for President Obama, and it's right in the middle of an election cycle.
Well, I disagree with that. I feel bad for her, and I'm going to tell you why. It's like the old adage about God. For those who believe, no explanation is necessary. For those who don't, no explanation will suffice. twice. So they're all saying that they believe the FBI director will do the right thing, but trust me, if he decides not to prosecute like they don't in most of these cases, it'll be seen as a political, move. And it's unfortunate for her because she's being dragged through the mud on something that I don't believe she has any criminal liability for.
They're going to say, of course, the fix was in, cynically, of course.
And the stakes remain high, of course,
Yeah.
as always. Gentlemen, great to have you here today. Thank you so
My
much for joining
pleasure.
us with your insights. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.